what got you here,
Right.
and what the hell are you doing here, and why are you doing it?
Why are we doing what we're doing?
Exactly.
Well, I think a lot of it is passion for nature.
Okay.
I think that's really where this is all coming from. When I started this journey, I didn't really, think much of nature, even though I grew up in the woods and swamps around here. It was more an experiential thing, but to really understand how it all fits together and really to understand what's lost here and what's been broken and how we actually can start to heal the different places on Long Island that need our help.
So that started with what? How did you start your journey in this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say it came back to coming to my hometown back 2012 for my high school reunion. I'd been away from Sayville over the decades. I'd come back and see family, but I had no idea how bad things had gotten with our bay. And that was really the start of that journey with Save the Great South Bay and the success we had in bringing really thousands to the cause and the great programs that are there now with the Creek Defender program and Bay Friendly Yards. But as time went on, I became more and more interested in the mainland, really, because it became more and more apparent that the problems of the Bay really begin on the mainland. It's what's coming out of the outfall pipes or off our lawns. It's all the cesspools and septic tanks and
lawn fertilizer.
Come April 1st, they'll be putting the lawn fertilizers on the lawns again. And I guarantee you that in that first week, we will see algal blooms all over Long Island because of that.
And you mentioned Save the Great South Bay. That's what drew our two paths intersecting, and that was through the help of a mutual friend, Liz Trupp, Liz Powers Trupp, who suggested that I meet you, and we started working together on the board of Save the Great South Bay, and before that, I really was not I would not consider myself an environmentalist. I consider myself a person who helped not-for-profits, and you were a not-for-profit that needed help, and so I got involved and started going to the meetings and having all of you environmental types talking about things like Phragmites. I didn't even know whether it started with a PH or an F when you started talking about Phragmites. I've learned a lot about that since, obviously. And a friendship that has bonded with us as well as common purposes at first Save the Great South Bay and now at the Long Island Conservancy. So the development of the Long Island Conservancy, you're moving on to the Long Island Conservancy is more an idea of a greater expansive organization.
Well, it's in a way another transformation. I was suffering greatly from plant blindness. I had no idea what I was looking at. I had no idea that most of our yards are like 90% non-native and with a fair portion of invasive. And then I got to see just how our parks, our public spaces were just being overwhelmed by this. And that Long Island was really losing a battle it didn't even know it was fighting. That's on the negative side. On the positive side, during COVID in those 2 long years. The plants were dropped June 2020, and on less than half an acre, there's over 3,000 plants here. Bushes, trees, and shrubs, all from here. And so it was so therapeutic to me to go out in my yard 4, 5, 6 times a day and to see what was happening, to see insects I'd never seen before, didn't even know the names of. To turn a driveway that had been there 100 years, all blacktop, and within less than a year, it's just a sea of butterfly milkweed and 50 monarchs at once rising from it, and it taught me very much to be more in the moment and to appreciate the details of what I was looking at. And I think I'm not alone in that experience. I see it all over the place because we've all been through this awakening, I think.
I find it interesting that when we're planting some of the native plants, some of the smaller shrubs, and we set up a what we call a nursery, like lay all the plants out in preparation of their being planted. I've observed the local birds swarming down and sitting on these little shrubs because this is where they want to be. And
yes.
It's not even planted yet. It's sitting in a pot on a front yard, and they're just like, oh, this is what I've been looking for.
Well,
their Ritz-Carlton has arrived.
Well, one of the weirdest things, it was June 21st, 2020, right? And it's sweltering. They're unloading the truck out in front. And, Frank's handing me different plants. He said, here's some milkweed. And he hands it to me. We put it on the ground and he starts talking. Not 10 seconds later, there was a monarch on it.
It's
out
amazing.
Of nowhere.
Yeah.
I didn't know. In June?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah.
And this is something you don't really see in numbers until August at all.
Right. Around here.
And especially around here. So it was a sign of sorts. So, yes, I've had my life changed by nature. Save the Great South Bay just came in and hit me sideways. Did not see that coming. That's what I was going to end up doing for 7 years. And likewise with the Conservancy, this further embracing of nature. And now we're connected with so many different communities that have their special places that they want to restore, and we're happy to help them.
It's really been extraordinary, and the ability to, and your house becomes like such a microcosm of the things that we're doing for the Long Island Conservancy, because we have, like you said, so many native plants that the animals from the area are swarming down in here.
Oh yeah,
even ones you've never saw, and the stormwater that's been a chronic problem on Candy Avenue is now going into a bioswale that is your front yard, and it's extraordinary. It all gets to be done right here as like a proof of concept kind of a thing.
Well, just explaining to people what the bioswale is. I mean, now that we're coming into spring, I should say, people are looking inside and saying, what is this, and why is this here, and what does it do? Flash forward another 3 months. There'll be, Canada goldenrod 9 feet tall looming over the thing, and butterfly milkweed, and aster, and seaside goldenrod, and little blue stem. And am I missing any?
You're getting the best ones.
Yeah,
and so we're now we're at a point where we're trying to bring this now to the rest of the island, and we're also finding, as we're screaming into the darkness, that there are pockets of light that are looking to hear this. And I think that social media has been a very important part of this, because it's allowed people, even though we haven't been able to get together socially because of COVID, we're able to connect through social media, and people from all over Long Island. We find people Western Nassau, Eastern Suffolk, Middle of Suffolk, all over the place that wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to communicate like this, are speaking about this.
Well, we're definitely finding our tribes, and we also know how urgent this is. This is serious stuff. We have to move at scale and at speed, because feel-good projects aren't going to cut it, given what we're facing here, which is, the work of E.O. Wilson or Doug Tallamay would tell you that we're heading towards otherwise a 6th grade extinction.
And it teased our next podcast will be about The Nature of Oaks, a book by Doug Tallamay. So be sure to stay tuned for the next one.
Yes.
So we're carrying our message across to ears that are hearing it, not only in different areas of Long Island, but municipalities are all very interested in this. They have environmental work that they want to do. They have environmental budgets that they're looking to work with, and we're providing an opportunity to give them the information that they need to make these moves. And we've also talked about, you and I have talked about the commercial areas. Businesses are now also adopting these and finding that it's a great opportunity to to engender cordial relations with people by showing that they're looking to have that vision towards reestablishing native ecosystems for our friends, and the conduit. What do we call that trail for the migratory birds? I think Frank calls it a conduit or a path or whatever. So
flyway.
Flyway. That's right. So there's these flyways, which migratory birds need to migrate, and they're losing their places to do that, and we need to reestablish that if we want migratory birds to continue to migrate.
Mm-hmm.
And and as you mentioned, like the monarch butterflies, I mean, they have a long travel to go, and they need places to stop and eat,
and refuel.
Just like we need a Holiday Inn, they need their own places to stop and refuel and to regenerate, to create a new generation and continue on the path.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because essentially we need to grow native plants, because that's the only thing our native creatures can really eat effectively. All insects are very specific in what they eat. They develop certain enzymes over millions of years. And if they don't have the native plants to eat, they die off. And the insects die off, then your reptiles, amphibians, birds, the fish are affected greatly by it. And that's why we're looking at the prospect of losing over 1 million species globally. Again, the 6th grade extinction. It's as though humanity was a meteor hitting the planet. So what do we do about that? We focus on the local. We focus on building habitat for our local creatures. We start to erase the separation between where humans live and where nature lives. Put some nature in your yard. This is what Talame is suggesting we do. Find those native plants that are most appropriate to your yard, depending on light, soil, and moisture, and what sort of goals you have in terms of what sort of native habitat you want to create. And then just be a good steward, be a good shepherd. And those small pockets of habitat that people could create in their yards and are creating would hopefully serve to reknit these fragmented ranges and give our local creatures a better shot at surviving what is otherwise a global catastrophe.
Right, and we have, it's funny, we talk about a lawn, which used to be a sign of affluence and really comes from England, right? And can you explain what that was really, why people started having lawns in England?
You could equally ask why people decided to get into gardening. The lawns, I'll get to gardening in a second, but the lawns are all, it's not just the lawn, it's the privet, it's the English ivy, the mute swans. It's so that we could emulate the aesthetic of the British Lord of the Manor. Every man has his castle, but that suburban aesthetic inadvertently turned out to be horrific for the environment. We are spending so much effort trying to keep alive plants that have no business being here. What eats lawn? Nothing, because there's no nutritive value for local insects there, and it just spreads and spreads. And privet the same way, it's invading all over the place. English ivy is strangling trees everywhere.
And buildings, it pulls the mortar out from between the bricks.
Right, and somehow it's become part of this aesthetic. Maybe some ivy leagues, or that's somehow dignified. The birds eat the seeds. I don't know how nutritious they are for those birds, but they will fly 50 miles and poop them, and the next thing you know, that's another tree dead. So we need to really be a lot more cognizant of what we're planting where. I mean, I'll walk into a public park, and I'll see the porcelain berry and the wisteria and the honeysuckle and the knotweed and the garlic mustard,
Norway maple,
and people say, "Oh, how pretty!" It's horrific.
Yeah.
And you won't hear a bird chirp. You won't, because it's a dead zone, and we have, unfortunately, an exploding number of dead zones given how invasives are multiplying. So the strategy is twofold. Identify and remove the invasives. They're going to keep coming back, of course, but make it real tough for them to reestablish by planting native.
Correct.
So it's a two-prong, and you make sure that the local community has some measure of ownership in this. Work with the chamber, work with the Rotary, work with the schools, and Sayville. Sayville's brand ought to be native.
Yeah, we talk about working with the schools because we at Long Island Conservancy see this as a generational thing. I mean, I grew up. I had a house with a yard, and I spent Saturday making my lawn crisscross cut like Shea Stadium's diamond because that's what I grew up understanding to be. That was what I could sit back and enjoy that. But I really now I'm coming to realize that the lawn, as I understand it in England, was an expression of affluence by the usage of land, unproductive usage of land. So I'm so rich that I can not have to grow crops on this property because I have that much money. So it was an expression of affluence that we try to mimic, but we don't have any farms behind it. All we have is the expression of affluence, and it's just like a parking lot. It's a monoculture that provides nothing, literally the same as the parking lot for the local animals.
The only person I ever see in their yard is me. I drive around, and there are dead zones for people as well. People are not even on their lawns.
Well, you crack me up because when we talk to people about going native, it's very difficult to get people to the point where they say, I don't want my lawn, unless they've been working their lawn for 30 or 40 years and are done with it. Those are some people that I've experienced with. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, they're all worried about having a lawn for their kids to play on. And I love your quote about that, which is, if they're playing on a lawn, if you have a lawn and you have prairies, the kids are going to be in the prairie.
Right.
They're not going to be on the lawn. The lawn is boring. The prairie has all these different birds and animals and tadpoles and frogs and worms and snakes, and those are the kinds of things that kids, boys especially, but girls too, find interesting. And as I grew up at my aunt's house, my Aunt Noelle in Huntington, she lived against a sump, which back then the sumps were nature pools, right? They weren't filled with invasives yet. So we would go in there and find the tadpoles and play with the frogs and play with the butterflies, and the birds would be all around us.
Sure. Because
that was interesting. The grass was boring.
Yeah. I mean, between the ages of 8 and 15, I was living in the woods and swamps.
Right.
To get back to Ptolemy, this is what he means by the homegrown national park. He tells of his granddaughter, inspecting the what insects were in the yard, and it was just being fascinated with. He has 10 acres, and he's been able to really bring back a lot of native habitat, and people thrive by that. When I was in 5th grade, I became an environmentalist. Why? It was the first Earth Day, and that changed my life. And I know that I think this message of local stewardship, getting the kids involved. We're going to be giving away plants, aren't we, on April 23rd?
Yes. And that's going to be really exciting. I think that would be fun. It'd be great for Sayville because it'll be a draw once we get the publicity out on that. And each one, and just like, we hand out bags of native seeds, rip it open, throw it on the ground, it'll get where it needs to go, and it'll grow or it won't, but it ain't going to hurt anybody or anything. But these plants that we're going to be giving out are going to be an opportunity for people to get an understanding of it, and if they want to buy other plants, they'll be available there as well, and start their path towards creating flyways for our migratory birds.
Well, if we need a soundtrack for this, I would recommend Johnny Appleseed by Joe Strummer and Muscle Arrows, if you know.
Well, I know you're an audiophile, and I say that might be very, very fitting, but I can think of a couple of others, but we'll argue about that one.
Yeah, it depends on whose rights I can get.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think that there's just so much wind in our sails here, basically because we're at the right moment. I think people are ready for this, ready to embrace this, in part because, we're all we've got, every community.
I'm looking forward to doing it with you. And as we go forward, you've already noticed how much he understands about this, and they've asked me to help because I don't understand any of this. So I can help you hopefully by asking the questions that you would ask. So, all right, let's wrap this first podcast off, and we'll say goodbye until the next one.
Indeed, I'll just add, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, or at least trying to.
Links to materials discussed in today's episode are in the podcast notes. We would love to hear your feedback, so please leave a review or reach out to us directly at longislandconservancy.org.